Hi, everyone. I am Nikki Johns with the Real Joy Project, along with JennyLee O'Brien. And Shelby is here too. So we're all three coming to you today, and we have such amazing things to talk to you about. So one of the things I just want to remind you is if you love our conversations and you want to get any of the notifications of the things and things that we're talking about in the coming weeks or months and years, please feel free to follow us on YouTube, and we're also over on Facebook and Instagram. So without further ado, I want to kind of bring us all in and talk about some of the things that are really at the forefront that of a lot of people's thoughts and feelings right now. And one of the things are, what if? What if? Am I supposed to be married to this person? Just kidding. Am I supposed to be doing the job that I'm in? Is this the job that I'm only going to do forever? Am I always going to be a mom that like I never feel like I get to do some of my own things? Is this where I'm going to feel stuck? And asking that if you feel that way. I think sometimes we try not to tell people that we're feeling stuck or that we feel overwhelmed because we don't want to make our partners, the people that we work with, our kids, anyone around us to make us feel, we don't want them to feel that they're not loved or that we don't like hanging out with them. But at the same time, we start to have these questions about, am I where I'm supposed to be? And I think that happens at different times in our lives, but I also think it happens throughout a year. And so those are just some of the things that we wanted to bring up together with you guys today. And I guess that's my first question to you, ladies, is have you ever felt that? Have you had a case of the what ifs and why am I here and what am I doing?
Shelby, why don't you get started?
Yeah, absolutely. As a first-time mom, I think almost every single day I am asking myself, and maybe it's not necessarily what if, but am I doing enough? Am I doing the right thing? So it could come down to, well, what if I would have done this with Lakin today? Or what if we would have done something differently? So absolutely, as a first-time mom, I find myself questioning that all the time, whether I'm doing a good enough job, not only as a mom, but also, am I being a good enough wife? Am I being a good enough friend to, I moving down here, I had to form brand new friendships. And as an adult, it is way harder to make friends. But I've also found as a mom now too, it has been even harder to make friends. And so you find yourself being like, well, did I put enough time into this brand new friendship for it to really even flourish? So finding myself asking in more than one aspect, motherhood, friendship, relationships just in general. But a big one for me recently too has now been, what if I'm doing not doing the right thing when it comes to work too? Did I make the right choice to be a stay-at-home mom and try to work from home at the same time too? So lots of what ifs, or am I doing enough, for sure right now for me.
Yeah, absolutely. The friendship thing is something that I feel has definitely been something, as in someone who's been through different jobs, or even like different jobs where I was working outside the home versus working at home. And when you're working directly with people, you really build great friendships. And then so when you're going through different seasons of life, you sometimes can lose a little touch with them. And then you like feel bad because, oh, I'm not talking to this person as much because your life has moved into a new job position, which I can feel a little bit of that right now, missing some of my friends from my last job, but we all have new jobs because our company closed. But they're also the ones that are truly friends. I feel like you can get together even once a year and you're just like, it never stops. Like you just catch up so much. But I've definitely had a lot of those what if moments through my life also, of jobs, like I said, out of jobs I'm working away from home, jobs I've worked at home, I was a stay-at-home mom for a little while also. And you're always wondering, am I doing enough? That is like probably a huge question right there, because we put so much value on what we think others are expecting us to do. I think that's a huge part of it is, am I doing enough? Well, the question for me is like, do I feel like it? But then I always worry about, what does everybody else think I'm doing enough? As a stay-at-home mom, Shelby, I remembered worrying all the time. And I think some people really do think that. I always am like, yeah, I just sit around and watch Oprah and eat bonbons all day. And I felt like there were people that truly felt that's what I did, you know? And so sometimes people are like, what do you do all day? That's what I would respond. Because I'm like, really? Is this a
Mhm.
question?
Yes.
And I got to do the I worked out of the home till my kids were 3.5 and 18 months. And then I became a stay-at-home mom. So I got to see both sides, and holy cow, did my respect level go through the roof for both of them, because neither job was easy. Yeah. So I definitely have had a lot of those what ifs, and we can get deeper into that in this conversation. But what
Right.
about you, Nikki?
Well, I was just going to say, I think all three of us have had times where, whether, as we were talking about it earlier, whether we call it professional or we were working outside of the home, and then we had things that transpired in our lives that helped us or um, moved us into working from home. I know I'm just going to share like JennyLee, she said she was working, in an office and something like that. Then she moved to being a stay-at-home mom and was doing a lot of things during that time. Shelby, you were working in a more professional setting, then you moved all those different things, and then that transitioned into you working from home. For myself, I was a lifelong school psychologist and special ed administrator. I shouldn't say lifelong, I'm not all that old yet, but a 20 plus year career in that. And for those that don't know, then we lost our daughter in a tragic car accident. And they always tell you don't make any major decisions in that first year. Yes and no. But it was in that transition, I realized in that year after she had passed that I knew that already I was starting to have some of those feelings of, I talk about them as restlessness. I was already having those feelings like, I just don't know that I fit in anymore. I don't know that it's kind of like it described like what I would think of a snake feeling, like your skin just doesn't feel comfortable anymore. It was no one else, right? I think growing up in the Midwest or Western North Dakota, it was that you were supposed to, get a good job, have good benefits, and stay there, right? And get in that job and stay forever. And then sometimes we hear from the older generation or whatever that or from the older generation talking about the younger generation, which Shelby would probably be in that space, saying something like, these kids these days, every 7 years they change their profession. And I remember even kind of falling into that as I was an administrator and bringing people on and onboarding and things like that. And I remember thinking, gosh, they kind of jump a lot. And I kind of prided myself, and that's a whole nother conversation, which I think we're gonna find there's lots of facets to this. But then I decided to jump and say, you know what, I'm done, which was really hard because that identification, I always felt like when somebody said, "Who are you?" I'm like, well, I'm a school psychologist, because that was so much pride. But I also meant that like I'd worked my what off to get to this place. And now, once I stepped away from that, who was I? What was I? What was I going to be? Who was I to those those people, the mouse in your pocket, so to speak? Like, who am I going to be? And I know that then I felt a little bit lost. Like, I don't know who I'm going to be, but I started to realize like the people that are changing every 5 to 7 years, maybe they actually have the key to success. Because think about when you first start a job, right? A lot of newness comes. And I will say, from a people pleaser and a recovering perfectionist, not knowing what a job, when I went into a different job and I took that job part-time, I didn't know what the job was expecting, what the job description, I mean, it was very broad, but I had a lot of that like imposter syndrome, like, am I really supposed to be here? Is this where I'm supposed to be at? I don't know enough about this job. But then realizing that a lot of the things that I had learned before were going to help me in this job. But that goes back to where the what ifs, like, what if I don't know, right? What am I supposed to do? Or what if this doesn't feel right after a while? And having that confidence and the courage to say, it's time. It's time. And I know both of you have had some of those, so I don't want to take up all of that time, but some of those feelings of, I always say there's a 5-year rule because of being in education. I'd say your first year, you realize all the things that you didn't learn in college that they didn't teach you. The second year, then you're busy learning the things that they didn't teach you. First year, doggy paddling. Then you're like, okay, I'm learning. I've learned more of the things. And that third year is your middle finger, which you feel like you've kind of gotten to the top. And I don't think it's just education. I think it's in jobs in general, right?
And being a stay-at-home mom, and that I
Okay.
could say that the same way,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah. So that
Jenny's
third year, you're
counting.
like, oh, I actually think I might know what I'm doing. And that fourth year, you feel more confident. And then that fifth year, and I'm not saying it has to always be years, maybe it's months for some positions. And even being a mom, like I think you could talk about that, right? Being a new mom or being newly married, like Shell brought up about um, being a wife. I think that the reason why we want to bring this up, and then I'm going to let you guys talk or you guys share, but it's like we're not alone. We think we're alone. We think that no one else out there is having this because we're looking around like nobody else is saying that they're struggling, right? Nobody else is like pulling their hair out or saying help, help, help. But inside we're saying, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Is this what it feels like to feel right? I don't know. Like I'm feeling sweaty, but am I feeling sweaty because I'm nervous and it's not the right fit? Or am I feeling sweaty because yes, it's the
I'm
right fit?
excited. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's where I think we have a lot of commonalities that all three of us now have a component of working from home. I have the blessing of 3 days a week I work my day job, and then the other 2 days I work the several different businesses that I have. But I have that flexibility. But I will tell you, living in the world of like go, 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 and that my worth is tied to my productivity is like I really am in rehab because that becomes an addiction. It becomes this like drive that even sitting on the couch and resting and maybe watching a show or reading your book. I actually just read that somewhere today that, thinking that we still, and that so resonates with me that we have to earn rest. Rest is not earned. It's that it's necessary. It's necessary for us to be able to do our jobs or be a good mom, be a good wife, be, all the things that we want to be, but be who we want to be to us. So, how about you guys? What do you feel about that? All those what ifs and like how you feel in those transitions.
I think we can all, and maybe we've already kind of shared on this, agree that bottom line, it comes down to like, what if I'm not doing enough? Um, as you were talking, Nikki, and you were like, my value isn't measured by my productivity. But really, I feel like all three of us have, whether we've mentioned it on a previous episode or just as we've been talking, we've all said things along those lines of like feeling like that is how we measure our value, even though we know better than to do that. So
Mhm.
I think the what ifs are coming up for all three of us in a ton of different ways. It's interesting that you brought up that it can feel very lonely when you're feeling this way. We've talked before about comparison and, all sorts of different topics, but all of those uncomfortable feelings, or the ones that we would say are maybe like negative, like that, like the what if I'm not doing enough or what if I'm not good enough, it can get very lonely. But I just had a conversation yesterday with another mom friend who is at a very similar stage as me. She's a first time mom. Her child is similar in age to mine, and she is working from home part time to keep her license for what she is doing. I won't go into a ton of details on who she is, but her and I were talking back and forth about how she's literally working to keep her license. If she were to take a break like she wants to be that 100% stay at home mom, she would be at risk of losing her license that she worked really hard for the last several years to get. So she's having some guilt about, still trying to work, but also the guilt of like, well, I worked really hard and did this for myself too. So she doesn't want to let it go. But her and I were just talking back and forth about that. And I kind of shared my experience with her too on how I First of all, I never pictured myself to be a stay-at-home mom ever. If you would have asked me even 4 years ago, I would have been like, yeah, no, like there's no way I'm doing that. So when my husband and I made the decision that I was going to be a stay-at-home mom, it was kind of like, okay, what if this completely blows up in my face? What if I don't actually like it? What if people are like, well, gee, I told you so, Shelby. Like, we told you you weren't going to enjoy this because you've always worked somewhere. My previous job, I had been there for over, it was like right at 7 years. And if we wouldn't have moved, I likely would still be working there. Absolutely loved it. But it's just the what ifs keep popping up for me, and those feelings of like, what if I didn't make the right choice to be a stay-at-home mom? And there's points in being a stay-at-home mom where I can say that I feel like I know that I made the right choice to be a stay-at-home mom. I really do enjoy it. But there are some times too where I'm really sitting here like, well, what if I don't work anymore, like at all? Am I ready to give up something that's just for me? What if I were to do that? Would it be better? Would I be able to give more time and attention to Lakin? Or what if I didn't do that and my business like really grew to something big? So I'm really stuck in this like, what if I do this or what if I do that? And it's really making me question like, what do I want to do with my life and where do I want myself to be? So it's cool to hear from both of you because Jenny's experienced like the stay-at-home mom and then starting to work from home too, but she's also been like out in the corporate world, the business world. And then for you, Nikki, to like throw in the towel after, 20 years and say that you're done. So it's, I feel like I'm where both of you have been before. And yeah.
So I gotta tie. I was writing notes as you were talking. I don't even know where to start, but I want to tie back to when you said, "What am I going to do for the rest of my life?" Okay, so I'm 47. Nikki's 49, right? There,
Yeah.
I don't think about that anymore. I just think about what do I want to do right now. But at your age, yeah, and I think because whether we're putting that pressure on ourselves or we're letting the what we think other people think we should do, is it even what they actually think or we just think they're thinking? But
Right.
there's that stage of your life like where you're like, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? And here to tell you, Shelby, that my life has changed so much through so many things I never, when I back was in college or just first got married or any of that stuff. The job I left to become a stay-at-home mom, I did not leave it to become a stay-at-home mom. The job was just causing me a lot of stress and causing stress in my family because I was so stressed. I never thought I'd leave that job. The pay was one of the best paying office jobs in my area. The benefits were through the roof. Like, why would I ever leave that job? I was going to retire from there. And I was in my 20s at the time. I'm going to retire from here because, man, that retirement's going to be amazing. Well, then I ended up leaving it with the intention of looking for another job. And I was just going to take like a couple of weeks off, figure out what I was going to do. And my husband's job kind of exploded at the time. He's in the oil field business up here in the Dakotas. He was working tons of hours. And I just naturally became a stay-at-home mom. Not a plan, because sometimes God or whoever, whatever you believe in, puts us where we're supposed to be. So now I'm a stay-at-home mom, a little lost because all my friends are working friends because that's who I knew at the time. And I was used to getting up every day, getting dressed, doing all the things. And then that turned into, as a stay-at-home mom, I'm just going to kind of quickly go through my story. But as a stay-at-home mom, I became I always said, I don't know why they call it a stay-at-home mom because we were never home. But I organized the community play group to stay busy. I actually remember I started doing cakes. Like I would decorate children's cakes and sell them. Like I always had these little things, which maybe they weren't a job, but they gave me something to do. And I don't want to say that being a stay-at-home mom, just a stay-at-home mom wasn't enough, but it just gave me little things that I enjoyed doing on the side, too. And so, but again, when you, through your life, you have to figure out why am I doing this? Am I doing this because other people expect me to, or I think they expect me to, or that's the next step? So then my kids started going back to school. I became a substitute teacher because that fit into their schedule. And then I started helping women ditch their bras. And I worked for a company that I helped women find a bra replacement that helped them make feel good. I did that for 7 years until our company closed. And you guys, I tell my girls all the time who are now 17 and 19, I'm like, it's great to have plans and make goals for your future, but also know it's okay if it changes. Because
Mhm.
never in my life would you have told me I would have been selling underwear on the internet
Mhm.
when I was in my 40s. So
Mhm.
then that business closed, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And Miss Nikki's telling me, like, well, Jenny, you could do like social media marketing and that. And I'm like, I don't even understand what you're trying to tell me, you know? And one day she sat down with me and gave me some examples, and I started my own business doing that now. And like, again, if you would have told me that 5 years ago, I would have been like, you're out of your mind. So that planning of like always like, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? I think you've got to like, what do I want to do right now? And
Mhm.
it's going to change because
Mhm.
life changes sometimes for the better, sometimes not so much for the better. And you have to pivot in those moments. And you brought up guilt. Like, holy cow, does that like lead our lives so many times? Instead of us making choices on what we want to do or what makes the most sense, we're doing it out of pure guilt because I should be spending 24/7 with my child right now, or
Mhm.
I should be doing this. The should be's, like, one of my favorite sayings is don't shit on yourself, which is basically
Mhm.
like don't shit on yourself all day
Right.
long. I mean, I had a counselor teach me that, and I'm like, that has always stuck with me. So if my husband and I really get into the I shoulds, we're like, stop the shoulding. Like,
Mhm. Mhm.
so I'm going to stop talking. So, because I took so many notes, but who are we doing enough for? Like,
Yep.
who are you really trying to be enough for in that moment? So that was kind of a lot of rambling, but that's kind of like,
No.
that has shown me just that my story has shown me like, I'm not going to worry right now what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I'm just going to do now, right now. Because,
Yep.
and even as a mom, we know that, like me and Nikki know that now as a toddler, you're like, oh, my child's going to be like this as a teenager. Yeah, no, that it didn't work out that way. So I don't even plan.
Toddlers
Yeah,
toddlers aren't even the same. Like Lakin's
Language.
nap schedule this whole week hasn't even been the same every
from day to
single day.
day.
You
Yeah.
know, like
Yeah.
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 Being a
Uh
mom probably teaches us that most flexibility, or being a
Yeah.
dad, or, that
Yeah.
you think you know what this picture is going to look like. And your kids teach you that no, that's not how it's going to go.
Yeah.
One thing I just want to add quickly is while you were talking, Jenny, I thought of um I think for me, everything has just changed so quickly that you
Mhm.
don't have a chance to really like let yourself catch up in the moment,
Yeah.
because I find myself like I enjoy what I'm doing right now, and I really am trying to be like, well, what do I want to do right now? Like, who do I want to be? And I think that's the toughest question, for me to like, if you made me just like write an answer down right now, I'd be like, I don't know, because I would have 8,000 things that I'm like trying to write down on the paper. So that for me is just like, who do I want to be? And I just need to take that moment, kind of to steal your word of the year last year, Jenny. Like, I need to just pause and
Mhm.
observe all of the changes that have happened in my life, even in the last like 3 years. And
Mhm.
just take that moment to be like, okay, this is where we're at. What are you going to do about it? Who do you want to be now?
And take a moment when you're in that moment and look at how far you've came. Like,
Yeah.
and go, oh my gosh, look what I've done.
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was actually, those were some of the words that I wrote down too. Both Jenny and I always take notes, if one day we'll probably show you the notes, but those are things that I was thinking about. I love the connection that we have here with our group. Our lives have been different. Our journeys have been different. We're at different ages and different seasons, but things that I think about when you were sharing, and even Jenny Lee was sharing her story, why we choose to go down the roads that we do. I'll be completely honest. I chose to be a school psychologist because I didn't even know they existed actually when I was a kid. Number one, I didn't even know they existed. I went to grad or undergrad and I got it in psych, and I knew I had to do something other, you have to get something above that. And I was actually just having this conversation with a friend last night, and I finished our undergrad, my husband and I did, and We were barely making it. We did not have enough money. We would already had started to have some debt. I mean, from undergrad and things like that, but we were just not making it. We had $100 left over after all of our bills were paid, and that was back in the late 90s, that kind of thing. And it was just like I knew that I don't even know that it was a conscious decision, but I knew something had to change. And so that's where I said I have to go to grad school. I was like 7 months pregnant. Everybody thought I was batshit crazy, excuse me. But I was like, they're like, I think that's horrible, pregnancy hormones. No, it was that, and it changed our lives. Not saying that we wouldn't have had a good life, probably, the way that it was going, but it was going to be a struggle. It was going to be a struggle. But here's the other thing that I talk about is that I used what some of those things that I thought people thought about me, and I used it as my fire and my energy and my, fortitude to get to that next level. But here's what I learned is if you don't let go of that fire that helps propel you to that place, it will burn you. It will burn you out. And that's where like that happened with me. I realized like I got to the top of the mountain and I was like, why am I here? I'm not saying that I wasn't good at my job. I think I was a really good school psychologist and I was good at what I did. Leading a team. There were a lot of things. But what I didn't realize until later on, the whole reason why I started down that journey was to prove to someone else that I was worthy and that I was smart and that I was going to make it. And so that I was living the life that I thought someone else thought I should have. And then I realized that's not necessarily, and I think some of that comes with age, but what makes me really happy is that you, Shelby, and other people of your age group are starting to say, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to live in that. So, like, asking the what ifs are coming earlier now. And also, you're saying, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that because that's going to make my mom or my mother-in-law or my aunt or uncle or whoever, or my spouse or whoever, my friends happy, right? And one of the things that JennyLee has said to me before is that just because you're good at it doesn't mean that you should. And
Yeah.
that is something that, so the what ifs, what happens when we get stuck in those of like, should I be going down this path? Should I be going down this path? One of the things that I know both JennyLee and I've walked each other down, because we've been with each other for, I don't know, 7, 8 years or whatever it's been, is taking that inventory of what is it that we're loving about our lives right now? What things would we want to change? And what are some of those things that we are out of grasp or things that kind of whatever, some people would say dreams, but just like if I could have it be different, what would that look like? And I will tell you, I didn't dream it up. Just like you said, I didn't think I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. I never thought it would be possible to be able to work a day job 3 days a week, which I thought I should tell no one in the way that like I think I've cracked the code of how to find happiness. Like I don't want to I mean, you can be good at your job and find some happiness in your job, but I'm like, I want happiness from my life, you know? And so that's where now at the season of life that I'm in, I was able to shift that, work 3 days, then work my other businesses. But also if I don't feel like it, I'm not flipping working today. Or I'm not doing that. It's on my list, but that's where once we start to realize that we can change our minds. It was a mind blown moment, even as a psychologist, of thinking, shit, I can change my mind. What? Like because I think sometimes we think that like we have to have the answer of the universe has to tell us like it's okay, right? Like give me a sign. And I'm like, well, yes, that's good. I say I look for that too, right? Say my prayers or whatever, but also that you know what? No, this isn't serving me. I'm doing this, I'm working endless hours and all of this stuff and I'm not getting what I used to. And so it's okay to change our minds. And I think that's where I'm not telling everybody to leave their jobs, right? But it's like if you're not happy or it's and I think sometimes people get too hung up on that. Well, like if you're not happy, then then oh, you're just going to leave everything. I'm not saying you have to leave it in that moment, but if it's not fulfilling to you and you've made some of those adjustments and it's not working for you, then it's okay to say, you know what, this is not right for me. I'm going to work towards making that change. Whether it's a job, it's, I mean, I also think that like, I agree with JennyLee and both of you. I always have said with all my friends that are stay-at-home moms and those that work from home that are stay-at-home moms, I think that they get a very bad rap because here's the thing, they're trying to take care of their kids, they're trying to do all the other things. And one of my very good friends years ago said to her husband, I will stay at home, I will be the stay-at-home mom. But that does not mean that there will be a meal on the table at every meal. And the house is not always going to be clean because you know what? Those are separate jobs. And those are just not, I know my boundaries. And that was another thing I wrote down is like, I think when, or at least for myself when I was younger, I had no boundaries. I just was trying to fulfill all the things for everyone else. So the what ifs, I didn't even think about the what ifs. I was just like head down, do the things that I'm supposed to do, right? And I didn't even think that I could change my mind. Like, I went to so much school, I spent so much money, and I'm like, so what? So what? So what? It's not fulfilling to me anymore. It's not to negate all of the great stuff that I did before or that it was fulfilling to me then, but it isn't anymore, and giving
And
myself that break or being courageous to myself to say, okay, and like, now what am I going to do? And that's the scary part, right? But that's where finding people that you connect with and support you in that. And it doesn't mean it's not going to be without bumps. But I think that's the biggest thing, if I can say anything, and then I'm going to turn it over to both of you, is that we can change our minds. It doesn't mean that doesn't mean that we're incompetent or that we shouldn't be trusted, right? You're not going to stay around. I realized long ago God put people in my path for a certain reason. When I was a school psychologist and as a special ed administrator, there were people that came in and they only lasted a year or two. And I shouldn't even say lasted. They were only in my life for a year or two. And at first I thought, this is why? Why, Lord? Why don't they ever stay? You know? Because then I was looking at that negative way and then I stepped back and I thought, you know what? Because I always thought I wanted to go on and teach at a collegiate level in the university and go on for my PhD. And then I realized, like, okay, I thought I had to go to get that degree, and here I was teaching all along. God had put those people in my past, so I was teaching them when they were out in the real world. And I was like, oh, and I saved myself some money. I didn't have to go and get my PhD to do that, right? And even when I was with Ruby Ribbon with JennyLee, I was still teaching classes of teaching women like, hey, this is how you can do this while you're still working a full-time job. I'm just saying that I think sometimes we get stuck in and we don't realize that we can change our minds or change the direction. Like, hey, this has been working, but it's no longer working, and it's okay to say, I want something different now. Yeah.
I think to add to that, Nikki, it's okay to want something better for yourself or different
Mhm.
without someone else's permission. Like,
Absolutely.
and I know you two would say this to me if if I'm asking for advice on this, but it comes down to like you don't need someone else's permission to make the right decision for you.
Mhm.
Whether it kind of came on because, like when we moved down here, I could have started looking for an office job, or, working as a fitness instructor in a gym, but we were also trying to settle in. We were literally living in an apartment. So we were house hunting. We had recently gotten engaged, so we were wedding planning, which for those that don't know, we live in Texas now, and our wedding was in Montana in my parents' backyard. So I'm planning our wedding within 6 months of us moving all the way across the US. So things like that kind of forced me to maybe make different decisions that I maybe wouldn't have if the circumstances would have been different, right? Same goes for having our daughter. I mean, we were married and we were pregnant within 3 months of getting married. And yes, that was our plan and decision. But business as an online personal trainer had just started to take off because I chose to not go work in a gym, right? Because of all the things. And then when I got pregnant, I continued training clients online. But once Lakin was here, it was like, I don't, I wanted like a normal maternity leave too. And so I took like 2, 3 months off from my online job. And it kind of forced me to like really sit back and think like, do I want to be working on someone else's schedule? Do I want to have scheduled appointments? It was getting to the point where a lot of my clients were able to be seen like in the evenings, which was cutting into like, I would be like snarfing down dinner really quick and like, peace out, Justin. Like, you get to hang out with our 3-month-old now because I got to go jump on a call for an hour. And it was just really clashing with our routine. So, one, I think you don't need the permission of others, but also the situations or the choices that you make kind of lead up to what other decisions and choices you make too. So, no, in my late 20s, early 30s, did I see myself being a stay-at-home mom? Absolutely not. But I wasn't in any kind of situation to set me up to be a stay-at-home mom either. I was working a full-time job at a chiropractor office and personal training on the side, and it was fine. It was fine not getting home until 8:30, 9 o'clock. Like, we had goals. Again, something that forced me to make the decision to work 2 jobs. We had goals to pay down as much of our debt as possible before we moved. So I think, you know, sometimes we're pushed, like you said, like whether it's the universe or God or however you believe, but we're kind of pushed into the right um, direction that we're supposed to be in. And I think sometimes we have to be okay with that too, where it's like, this is what I meant to be doing, or this is who I'm meant to be. And it's okay to sit and be someone different than you expected yourself to be too.
So true.
I think when we learn to do that for ourselves, and then it helps us to do that for others too, because it's so easy. I know even for myself sometimes to judge somebody else, and then I have to step back and go, why? Why am I doing that? Because, and I think we judge ourselves so much that then you deflect it onto other people sometimes. And again, that's what we want in the Real Joy Project is like, we want to bring the different generations together and the just different types of lives and what the different ages, and we want to bring that together so that way when we have these conversations we can all say I've been there, I've done that, and like, and then what's helped you get through that, I think that um we where's my I'm trying to think where I was going with that. I wanted to bring it back around though to you're just talking about those circumstances taking you to the next space is again sometimes it's like that's sometimes we fight where we're supposed to be like we're like getting moving, life's taking us in a different direction, like nudging you there, like basically telling you you're supposed to be there, and we fight it so hard, and that's when we find the most resistance from ourselves and from the world. It's like, okay, maybe I just need to stop and say something's trying to tell me I'm going in the wrong direction or the right direction. And I think that's just something we need to stop and listen to sometimes. You talked about the imposter syndrome earlier. So for those that are listening, tell us in the comments, like, have you heard of the imposter syndrome? Have you ever felt like you're in that? So what that means is that you are doing something, and Nikki and I and Shelby, we can all talk about this. You guys, we all talk like, I mean, like in this, we can tell you like what we've overcame and what we might be thinking, but I guarantee you, like, there's been so many times I'm calling one of these girls and I'm like, I can't do this. What am I thinking? I'm not smart enough to do this, or this is not, who am I to think I can do this? And they have to remind me that it's okay. So don't ever take us as like, we know what we're doing. We're just here to talk about it. Like, we're just here to make, yes, we want to, so you don't feel so alone, because having these two and my other tribe of friends around me helps me not to feel so alone through all of that. And I hope that that's what we're bringing to those of you that are listening to us. So that imposter syndrome is, you can even have imposter syndrome. Let's take it back to that stay-at-home mom. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Who gave me this baby? Why did they let me come home from the hospital? Like, and in reality, no, you have everything you need to do that inside of you. You know what you're doing. You've got this. Nikki, do you want to like lean into that a little bit more? You talk about the imposter syndrome a lot, and I just thought we should touch on that a little bit more for
Yeah.
maybe those who haven't heard of it, or because to me, once you started talking about it, it was a light bulb in my mind of like, that's how that, what that feeling is.
Yeah, I think that for me, it's happened a lot. Actually, after I said, "Oh, this is," when I said I kind of stepped off the treadmill, so to speak, of my career of 20 plus years in education, and then decided to switch gears. And I still stayed in education, but did something different. I had never done that job, and there's nothing like knocking you back down to ground zero. And uh, and I think that that's where, and even I wanted to bring it back to that each of us have our own businesses, and that a large portion, and I can only speak to North Dakota, but a large portion of women-owned businesses in North Dakota they're sole entrepreneurs, and so it's there's a lot of them that have employees too, but a lot of us are doing all the things, right? So we're not only doing the job, bringing home the dough. But then we're also trying to be the good wife of like, check in on them and like, what are we doing for that connection of marriage or relationships, right? But then we're also trying to be the good mom and being there for our kids. And, I know that that's a whole nother conversation about, raising my kids and what I didn't want to do, what I ended up doing, and how we came out of that. If you guys want to know more about that, put that in the comments and we can talk about parenting because that's a whole nother thing. Um, but then also um, about that, but then it came down to I wanted to do a business, but oh, I want to go back to that there again, perimenopause brain, right? That I don't want to forget about that. It's not just about the relationships, but then we talked about it on another episode, and this is something that it just like was an aha moment for me, is that invisible labor that we do. So making sure that the bills are paid, that the house is picked up or cleaned, whatever that, whatever you and your, maybe you're alone. So whatever you've set that bar to be, or you as a couple, or your kids, all of those different things. And then also take into your community. And it can be a lot. It can be a lot. Like I think back, both my husband and I have talked about that. He retired from coaching. I stepped back from that full-time job, did do 3 days a week, and then I do my other stuff. And we both had that moment of how did we do it all? How did we do it when he was teaching all day and he would drive the bus and coach and all those things? And then the same with me that I was, in administration, very busy as a job. And you do it a lot of times, but I wish I knew what I knew now to go back. And that's where why these types of conversations for me are so important because I didn't know who to ask. I had the imposter syndrome and that I didn't want to say that I didn't know, like
Right.
trying to figure it out on my own, but I was not necessarily, and not that we're looking for perfection, like we just said, right? You're not looking for perfection, but we're scared because when we look around and especially social media, different things like that, it looks like everybody's got it together.
Mhm.
But I'm just going to be completely, transparent. Like, here's another one. Like, my office looks so nice, right? But if you turn the camera, right? I mean, this is, that's the reality of it is that we can think that we are not measuring up. We can think of all the reasons why we don't measure up. But what we've got to start to learn to do is to flip that script and saying, taking that inventory of the things that we are really doing well. We tend to get stuck, when we think about all the negative things. And I know I'm going around. I'm just saying those are all the different areas and there's many more, right? Those are just caveats or categories, but there's a lot of things that we judge ourselves, like JennyLee said, and then we end up judging others, and then we get after ourselves, like, but what it comes back to, and I just read that recently too, it comes back when we judge someone else where it's really about us. It's 99.9% more about us than it is the other person when we're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they like, didn't hang up their sweaters instead and they put them in the dryer. And I'm like, Well, maybe they don't buy any sweaters that can't go in the dryer, that kind of, right? But we don't think about that. Yeah, I can see JennyLee has something to follow up that with. Yeah.
Well, I think that is so true is that we don't know anybody else's circumstances.
Yeah.
And even with our own kids, sometimes it's like, why can't you pick the garbage up and put it in the garbage? And it could like ruin me for hours in the past. Like I could just be mad all day. And they're off flitting around having a great day. They're not sitting there worried about it, you know. But that is in our adult life too. Like how often does that happen where something is bothering you because somebody else did something and they're having a great day. I have no idea that that was bothering you or their, what their choices, and not that their choices were bad, even you just didn't, why did they do that? Um,
Mhm.
Rounding back to how we started to the what ifs, like if we come back to, if you're at a point in your life right now and you're listening and you're just like, really been feeling unsettled or like you're not in the right place, whether that is in a job or just another area of your life, and you're just like, restless. Like just take some time and really think about that. If and a big question I sometimes see floating around is if you could do something different and didn't matter what you thought. I mean, even your own expectations on yourself, what other people thought, and money wasn't an issue, what would you do? And then sit in that a little bit because sometimes I think we just put in our heads that that's not possible. Like I said, I thought I was going to retire at that job that was now 5 jobs ago. And because I had to, because nobody's going to leave this amazing job. So if you could let go of that, what could you do? Because if you really sit down and look at it and let go of all those things that you think are written in stone, you can figure it out. You can figure it out. And sometimes you have to sacrifice in one area to grow in another area. And a lot of times you'll learn that sacrifice you'll forget about it in a couple of years. If it truly means something, you can go back to it. Shelby, you were saying like, what if I make this decision and it doesn't work out? Like what if I become a stay-at-home mom and I don't like it? Then go find a job. Like
Yeah.
now
I don't
I can say that from the outside looking in, but I've been in your position and still continue to go into your position again and again. Recently, I was doing some coaching with my business coach, and she was like, "Well, when you start hiring people," and I instantly was like, "Hiring people? I don't want to hire people." And then my brain was like, well, I suppose I could. And does that mean I should? Like, I instantly went to, does that mean I'm not going to be in a success if I get to a point where I hire people? And then I'm really trying to take my new business slowly and grow. And I hit a point right now where I'm like, I'm good. I don't need any more clients. I'm really happy where I'm at. I don't want to hire people. Could I expand and grow? Yes. Well, guess what that means? Payroll and more work and supervising. And do I need that or want that in my life right now? No. Am I saying that won't happen in 10 years? I never say never anymore. So I don't
Yeah.
know. But right now, I don't want that. And so I don't know. Sometimes you just have to step back and be like, what do I want instead of it's really easy for your brain just to start. Yeah.
Well, I think what you bring up is a great way to kind of bring this all to uh, you know, bring it to the end part for today, because there's lots of different things that we want to take this into too. But it's really that what someone else views as success, like hiring employees and things like that, that might be their idea of like the perfect job. But for you or I, or even Shelby, I know for me, and I know I've shared this with you both, is that for me, I have some different opportunities that are coming up and things like that. And what I did live that life, like you just talked about, JennyLee. I left the job that was all the things, right? I was at the top of my game. I was at all the things. I had the money. I had the retirement. I walked away from the top pay. I walked away from the top benefits, all of the things, because now my view changed. What I wanted is now, no, it was no longer what I wanted. For me, I made a point that I wanted to spend a lot more time with the people in my life that I really cared about. And then I wanted to make sure that because so many different choices that I'd made along the way had not allowed me to have that time with those people. And I didn't want to relive, I didn't want to have more regrets, right? So for me, my idea of success is making sure that I don't lose track of those, that I still don't block out time to spend with the people that I care about. So that to me sounds, that is what I equal my success, as long as I am not overbooking myself and things like that. And the same with you, like you just said, and I know that's even some for Shelb too. She's like, I don't want to be so busy that I'm not parenting, not to try to put words into your mouth, Shelb, but you know, I think we've all realized that. And that's this balance that we're trying to find. And those of you that are out there that want to be at the top, you go, girl. You go, girl. I will support you. But I've learned that it's, for me, it was really hard. And I lost a lot of other things along the way. And I found them. Now finding that balance, and I don't want to give that up. And I think that's what we have to realize, is just if that's what the picture perfect Pinterest or Instagram family or job looks like, that may be for somebody else, but that doesn't mean it has to be for us. Because I remember having that conversation with myself as I was making the bed the one day. I was like, oh my God, how can you not be a school psychologist? School psychologist, that's what you went to school for. There's no other job out there that you can do. And you've made all this money. And I mean, it's just flowing. And all of a sudden from the back of my head says, who the hell says you can't? Who says you won't be able to find a job? And it was just like, who let that person in? Like, who is that? Like, I was like, oh, what? Really? Right. So like I gave myself permission to say, it's okay to say, I'm done with this and I'm going to see what else is out there. So I think that's really what today's episode is all about. To bring it back is, as you're moving through wherever you're at, whichever season of life that you're in, are you having a case of those what ifs? That's okay, right? That change is hard, but also that if you're having that, take stock, take the inventory, ask the questions like JennyLee just said, asking yourself, is this, if you could do anything, what would you want? For me, it was more so having more time with myself, which shocked everybody, including myself. And same with Shelby, is like, no, I want, again, putting words into your mouth, but you said, I want to have some of that time that I'm spending with my family, but also my businesses they mean a lot to me. My clients mean a lot to me. I want to have that purposeful time. So hopefully our stories, telling you a little bit, I would like in one of another episode, I would really like for us to share a little bit how we made the decision to go rogue, so to speak, and choose our different businesses that we started up, and how that's been going, and what are the ups and downs of that, but that we are stronger for it. And we all have successful businesses, and success doesn't mean necessarily that we're millionaires or billionaires. It's the success that we've set in our boundaries and the definition that we've set forth, right? So before we end, I want to ask if either one of you have anything else to share, because I think it's been a really good episode. We've talked about lots of different things, but I think this is, whenever you're listening to this episode right now, it's in December, but this happens at any time of the year, right?
Mhm.
That we, whatever something has maybe triggered in us in our lives, that is this really the road or the path that I want to be on? And how do I go about changing that? And it's those, you can read lots of self-help books, you can listen to lots of podcasts, you can, get all the different kinds of things to tell you. But I think really going back to what JennyLee said, taking stock. What do you want? And maybe then starting to break it down. Like, how could I even just start to move like one thing in this day or this week that moves towards that, right? Yeah.
I think if I could add one thing just really quick on the imposter syndrome, that is something I've experienced several times, whether it be in a professional career or motherhood. But one thing I had read on imposter syndrome that kind of stuck out to me was, if you're in that moment of comparison or feeling like you don't belong, especially if you're like comparing yourself to someone in a similar situation or someone who already seems like they have what you want to become, um, instead of that person being the intimidation factor for you, try modeling what you think they did to get to
Mhm.
where they are. I can openly admit, as a online personal trainer, I went to college with a girl who is out there absolutely killing it in the personal training world online. And we have the same degree from the same school, right? So initially, I would look at her success and be like, man, like, there's no way I can do that. I can't do that stuff. But then when I read that, I don't remember if it was in a book or where, but it was like, well, why don't you look at her in a different light instead of comparing? Well, she's out there just like absolutely kicking butt. What things is she doing every single day to get to that point? So just gonna kind of leave you with encouraging words, right? If you are in that point of imposter syndrome, or you catch yourself comparing yourself to another mom, another female, just another person who you are like, that's what success looks like for me, or that's what I want, then try modeling what they're doing. You don't have to copy that person, but they have the habits and, the day-to-day things. And don't be scared to reach out to that person too, because there's a lot of people out there that would be willing to help you. And something my dad always said growing up is, no question is a dumb question. And that I still roll my eyes at, because I'm like, well, sometimes I feel dumb still. But don't let other people's success be intimidating for you either, because anybody is capable of doing what they set their mind to. You just have to decide to do it and then still put in the work to do so. But
Absolutely.
yeah.
I love that. I love that, Shelby. And yeah, and it comes back to, what do you want? Like, is that what you want? And if you don't want that at the moment, you can still be so happy for her,
Yep.
And so I love what you just said. That just makes so much sense to me. So, and then we were talking about earlier, just because we can do it doesn't mean we have to. Just
Yep.
because it's something that we've loved doing for a long time and then life changes and you don't anymore, doesn't mean you can't change it up. And I love the saying that says, we can do, how does it, we can do anything, but we can't do everything. Like, I love that saying. When I read that, I was like, whoa. Yeah, because sometimes I think we put that, well, I'll just do it because I can do it. But no, we can do anything, but we can't do everything. So,
Yeah, perfect way to end, JennyLee. Yeah.
all right. Well, if you enjoyed our conversation today, again, just make sure to like and tap the bell so that you get notifications, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss future conversations. And if there's certain things that you guys would love for us to talk about or want to comment anything on this, please leave it in the comments. We love to hear from you. We love building connections with you. Some of you have reached out in private messages. Thank you for that. And we encourage that. This is all about connection, and whether that connection is virtual or online or talking one-on-one, or it's just you coming to listen to us, we so appreciate you being here.
Yeah. Thank you guys. Have a great day.